Okay, get ready for this. We're going to connect an 18th century philosopher all the way to the code that's running your life right now. Yep, we're going from Kant to code. And along the way, we're going to tackle a massive question. Where does knowledge even live anymore? So let's just jump right in with the big one, a question that's kept thinkers up at night for centuries. Where are the rules written? You know, the rules that let us make sense of the world? How do we look at this absolute chaos of information flooding us every second and actually understand anything? All right, to really get a grip on where we are now, we've got to rewind a bit. I mean, for centuries, some of the smartest people who ever lived were locked in this huge debate over one single thing. Where do the rules of knowledge actually come from? So, you had two main camps, right? On one side, you had the rationalists. Let's call them Team Reason. They were convinced that real knowledge comes from pure logic. You know, these universal truths that exist no matter what. And on the other side, you had the empiricists, or Team Senses. They said, nope, we're born as blank slates, and everything we know comes from what we see, hear, and touch. But here's the kicker, the really important part. Both sides, for all their arguing, agreed on one thing. They both thought the rules for knowledge were out there, somewhere in the world, not in us. And then this guy David Hume comes along and just throws a grenade into the whole conversation. He points out something super unsettling. He says, look, we never actually see cause and effect. We just see one thing happen, then another thing happen, over and over, until our brain makes a habit of connecting them. But think about that. If causality, the bedrock of all science, is just a habit of mind, then what is any of our knowledge built on? It was a total crisis. Philosophy was stuck. And right at this moment of crisis, Immanuel Kant steps onto the scene. And he doesn't just join the debate. He flips the whole table over. He comes forward with this absolutely revolutionary idea. He says, everybody, what if we've been asking the question completely wrong? What if the rules aren't out there in the world? What if they're in us? Kant called his big idea a Copernican revolution for philosophy. You know, just like Copernicus realized the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, Kant realized the world wasn't the center of our knowledge. He argued that we aren't just passive sponges soaking up reality. No, our minds are actively building our experience. The rules that make everything make sense, they're not out in the world. They're part of the hardware of our brain. Okay, think of your mind like a high-tech factory. You've got all this raw, messy, sensory data pouring in one side. Step one, the mind's basic operating system automatically sorts it all into the frameworks of space and time. You can't even perceive anything without those. Then, step two, its internal software, what Kant called the categories, and this includes causality. It takes that organized data and structures it into a reality you can actually understand. And that's when you get knowledge. So here's the mind-blowing part. Causality isn't something we learn from the world. It's a tool our mind comes pre-installed with to make a world. All right, so for more than 200 years, Kant's idea that the mind is where the rules are written has been pretty much the foundation for how we think about knowledge. But, and this is a huge but, we're living through another tectonic shift right now. Those fundamental conditions for knowledge, they're on the move. They're migrating from the human mind to a brand new address: code, data, and algorithms. There's a name for this new reality, coined by the writer Philomathos: synthetic epistemology. Now, epistemology is just a fancy word for the study of knowledge. So what's synthetic about it? It means that in this new world, knowledge isn't really built from our direct experience with reality anymore. Instead, it's generated by machines finding statistical patterns and correlations inside these gigantic archives of data. And this is such a critical difference to understand. Kant's synthesis, his idea of how we build knowledge, was a deeply human act. It was about structuring our lived experience of the real world. But the AI's synthesis, that's a totally different beast. It's an algorithmic process that chews on records of the world, all those photos, texts, and data points we create. The AI isn't asking what's true. It's asking a much simpler question. Based on all this data, what's the most statistically probable answer? And that right there is a total game changer for how knowledge gets made. Okay, so if we're now living in this world of synthetic knowledge, what are its rules? We've got to figure that out because this new digital territory, it has its own very strange and very powerful laws. Rule number one we need to get our heads around is something we can call the data mess. This is the seductive idea that large data sets are somehow pure, objective truth, a perfect mirror of reality. But they're not even close. Every single data set is the product of human choices: what to collect, how to label it, and just as important, what to leave out. So next time you hear someone say, the data says, remember that's often a way to hide the very human fingerprints and biases all over that data. Then there's the machine gaze. This is all about how an AI sees the world, and it's nothing like how we see. It's not looking for meaning or empathy or connection. It's just looking to measure, classify, and predict. It's a cold, ethically neutral gaze. It feels no compassion, no shame. It just sorts everything into boxes, threat or not threat, good investment or bad investment, potential customer or irrelevant. Which brings us to what's called the algorithmic nomos. Nomos is just an old Greek word for law, and that's exactly what this is about. In our digital world, code has become the new law. The algorithms that run our social feeds, our search results, our entertainment, they're like an invisible government. They decide what you see and what you don't. They shape what's considered normal, and they enforce these rules on our behavior all without a single vote or piece of legislation. So, what happens when these systems mess up? We get glitches. We get weird residue. But here's the thing, these aren't just bugs. You should think of them as clues. That bizarre AI image with a seven-fingered hand, that's a clue pointing to a gap in the data. It reveals what the system was never taught, what it ignores, or what it just can't understand. These mistakes are actually super valuable because they pull back the curtain on the hidden limits of this whole synthetic world. Which leads us, finally, to the most important question in all of this. What's our role? If the rules of knowledge are really moving into the machine, then what on earth is our new job? What is our responsibility now? Well, the framework from Philomythos offers up a powerful new identity for us, the threshold human. Think of yourself as standing on the threshold, the doorway, between human and machine intelligence. The threshold human gets it. They accept that making sense of the world is now a partnership with AI. But they hold on to one absolutely non-negotiable rule. You can't automate responsibility. The ethics, the morality, the final judgment, that stays 100% human, period. So what does that job description look like? It means we have to be active critical filters. It's our job to hunt for the hidden assumptions and the revealing glitches. We have to constantly push back against the data myth and never let the data says be the end of the conversation. Our task is to inject human values, things like context, empathy, and wisdom, into the cold, calculating logic of the machine gaze. And above all, we have to remember, always, that the final call is and must be ours. And so, we end up right back where we started. Kant's big question, where are the conditions for knowledge written? It's not just some dusty old philosophical problem anymore. It is more urgent today than it ever was in the 1700s. The address has changed, that's for sure. And now it's up to us to ask that question again. But this time, we need to be looking at the code, the data sets, and the algorithms that are quietly shaping everything. Because maybe the most important question we can ask ourselves is the simplest one. What happens to us? What happens to our world if we don't?